Hello, I'm Father Mitch Pacwa, and welcome to EWTN Live, where we bring you guests from all over the world. And our guests tonight do come from all over the United States. They're here to help us take a look at a number of spiritual and cultural issues that are affecting everyone these days. Now, these are the ladies from EWTN's own The Catholic View for Women. And they show where each week they deal with timely and important topics of interest to women and a lot of men too. So they're introducing some new ladies to their dedicated audience, and we'll meet them tonight too. So please welcome from the Catholic View for Women, our good friends Janet Marana and Teresa Tamio, and we have one of the new ladies, Vanessa Denha. Garmo.
Yeah, that's very good, Father.
Very
Got
good.
Ladies.
a little slang in there.
See? Well, this is not so hard a name. Good to have you all with us.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
for
Father.
having us.
And of course, you live down in Florida,
Florida now.
but you're from New York.
That's right.
You live
originally
in
New York,
Michigan,
but I'm from
and
Jersey.
you're from Jersey, and you're living in Michigan.
From Michigan.
From Michigan.
Yes.
Bless your heart.
Yes.
I went to University of Dallas back when, excuse me,
Detroit.
University of Detroit.
Oh, U of D.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
very
UD,
nice.
So, and by the way, just so the audience knows, in the second segment of our show, we'll introduce another new addition for the Catholic View for Women, and that will be Mary Kaminsky, but we'll get to her later, so stay tuned for that. All right, so y'all are doing a series, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, what are you talking about?
Oh my goodness, Father. What aren't we talking about?
Yeah,
Right?
I don't want to know that. I want to know what you are talking
What
about.
we are talking about. Well, let's see. We taped 12 shows in 2.5 days. Pretty good. We covered subjects like, well, today alone, we covered domestic violence, a topic that we don't hear much about.
Not enough.
And there are women sitting in churches all across America that are victims of this. And we discussed a lot of the key points of what to look for, and also how should the clergy and the people that are on all the different groups that are within a church, how do you kind of keep your ear to the ground or be sensitive or reach out to women who might be suffering some issues at home that are abusive, and yet there's a shame attached to it, that they're almost afraid to admit this stuff, because a lot of women blame themselves because of the abuse.
Yeah. See, that's one of the problems that is very common with that kind of abuse. The victim feels it's their fault because that's what the abusive person says.
That's right. That's how they present it.
You mentioned something in the intro, Father, that was interesting, because you're talking about how we bring cultural issues. As Janet said, this is a big problem everywhere, but in the church as well. But we also talk in that segment that we did about how the culture, in terms of how porn is now affecting domestic violence and all kinds of violence, because of porn getting more and more hardcore and graphic, and they're seeing an increase in domestic violence and sexual violence against women because of pornography. Not an easy topic to talk about, but I work on my radio show on Catholic Connection on EWTN with so many folks who are in marriage ministry who are seeing more and more of this occur in marriages. So we try to talk about a lot of the issues that are not exactly, maybe comfortable, but we want to make sure that women and men, because we have a lot of different viewers, have the resources available, and that they shouldn't be ashamed, as Janet mentioned.
And if there's somebody who is an abuser out there,
Sure, that too. Yeah,
that
to get help.
person also needs to go get help. And I would say the majority of cases, the physical abuse does come from the man, but not always.
No, yeah.
Not always.
Yes.
Yeah,
Not
we talked
always.
about-
Not always. And then another topic that we did was, of course, the
And miscarriages.
miscarriages. We did miscarriages.
Yeah, Vanessa has shared
Vanessa
her testimony.
herself had a personal
Yeah.
testimony about miscarriage. And one of the things we brought out that is, how do we, people, respond when we hear someone is having a miscarriage, right? And most people, unfortunately, say things that are not helpful to the women. They say
Like
things
what would be unhelpful?
Like,
why don't
it's
you
meant to
share?
be.
it's meant to be.
You know, or God had a plan. Oh, don't worry, try again.
Try again. Nature
You
took
know,
its course.
Nature took its course.
Nature took its
Yeah,
course.
There's a lot of
Yeah,
things that,
lot
and, you
of
know, and I know
things.
really people don't know what to say, and they're trying to be comforting, or some people, if you've never been through it, you disregard the fact that to that mom, that was her baby. I mean, for me, it was my baby. I mean, I named my second miscarriage. I mean, I was far along to know I was having a boy, and we named him. I've had two, and you go into kind of a depression, you know,
Right.
after you lose the baby.
It would seem to me that, you know, the natural response would be to grieve
Right.
the
Yes.
loss of
Right.
the child.
Which I did.
But if other people are saying, well, you can try again, whoa, 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 whoa. You know, yeah, a widow who loses a husband, well, you can try again. That's not the right answer.
No, that's not the right
not
answer.
the
I think
right
people-
And
answer.
Vanessa said, I think people mean well, but they
Yeah.
don't
Mean well,
understand. And
but-
so I think having personal testimonies, Vanessa's personal testimony, and I often talk about my experience in the secular media, and also how my husband and I had our marriage miraculously, you know, saved, and what we're doing now compared to what we were doing back then. He's a deacon, and you know, I'm obviously in Catholic media. So to share what's on our heart and what we've gone through, and to share our own experiences. So I think it's a unique show, and I think this is our 13th season. It's hard to believe, and the fact that we keep going and it's popular. We're so grateful to EWTN for the opportunity. But I really think we're hitting a nerve, because we're getting more. I hear from more and more men. I was coming out of mass today, or actually lunch, and the man said to me, "Hey, I love you ladies on the Catholic View." And so men are watching now, which I think is great. Yeah.
But, you know, with miscarriages for a minute again, you know, part of the response is if that was a 6-week baby in utero or a 6-month born child, your response to the loss should be the same. And that's where it's different. And there's also, we brought out on the show how, yes, you know, slow the medical profession down a little when they schedule these women to go in for a procedure after the miscarriage, to say, listen, I want to have the remains of my child. Contact the clergy. I want to have a funeral mass. I want to, you know, you're entitled to do all that, but the secular world doesn't acknowledge it.
Or no one tells you that.
Right.
No one tells you that.
Or in some states, it's not permitted.
Oh,
Right.
okay.
You know, that's one of the other things. You're not permitted to bury the remains of a child that was aborted or that died in a miscarriage.
Right.
And I remember working with a couple who miscarried twins, which also is not so unusual. That's sometimes a
Right.
difficult situation in utero. And so, you know, the mother almost died herself because she almost bled to death. Her blood pressure had gone into the 30s. You know, she was at high risk. Well, then she's trying to recover. She just lost her 2 children, and they said, "No, you got to just sort of we'll take care of it. We've got a place where we burn all that stuff." You know, and nobody would, and none of the cemeteries. Finally, we had to find a small parish in rural Texas, and the pastor found out. He said, "You bring that here, and we'll have a funeral, and you can use this church.
God bless
We're not
God
going to put
bless
up
him.
with that."
Yeah.
Yeah, because you know it's an old-timey church, so they had their own cemetery
Right.
across the way from the church, and he didn't charge anything. He just, you know. But one of the other things too was even to find a certain type of honorable casket for a miscarried child, because some of them, you know, they vary in size, and some are, you know, bigger than others. And I think there's now, at least there was developed a company that actually makes.
Yes, I actually had them on my show. I can't
Did
remember
you?
the name,
Yeah.
and it was a woman who actually went through a similar situation that
Yeah.
developed it.
Yeah,
Well,
and,
one of the
and you don't
things-
want to put them in a shoebox. I mean,
Right.
this is what
No.
they were telling.
Yeah.
This is-
No, we brought
no
out on the
respect.
program, there's that new ministry we highlighted, A Mom's Peace.
Right.
Yeah.
And their website, Father, is amomspeace.org. And they have the information there on their website about how to get proper burial, little casket, or whatever's needed, and all the steps and support to help a family. Yeah. So things are moving along.
And there's some, like you said, Father, there actually is a church in Ann Arbor that every year they have a mass for women and families that have lost a child to miscarriage, which is beautiful. And it helps with closure, I think, with a lot of families.
And, folks in the pro-life movement also have, prayer services and masses at the cemeteries that do allow aborted babies. So, we need to help pray through this. There are forces in our culture that don't want that because it contradicts an ideology, but their ideology contradicts human experience.
Yeah, and I think they don't want that because they don't want to be reminded of the truth. And it's really the Holy
They're
Spirit
guilty
deep down,
of something bad, they know it,
Yep.
and they try to hide.
Absolutely. So we covered that. We did miscarriage. We did the domestic violence. We also looked at in vitro fertilization and also egg harvesting, which is very, very dangerous for women and the fallout and the side effects of that. We talked about social media and teens and tweens. Let's see. Oh, we did my new book, Listening for God, from Sophia Press, which was fun. It was
great.
And all kinds of different topics. And
Suicide?
Talked about suicide. Yeah, with Father Chris Alar, whose grandmother had died from suicide.
Well, this is something that has become much more common. This year of COVID has seen a very serious uptick
In suicide.
And domestic violence.
Yes.
Yes, that's
And
right.
pornography.
And pornography, because all the time on the computers and
Yeah.
on the internet. And it's the isolation and all the mask, I'm not saying I'm against masks or anything, I'm just saying, people aren't, natural things bother normally. People greet each other, they're shaking hands, they normally hug each other, kiss each other, now you can't even see each other, and that's a real problem. It's the human contact that's being diminished.
And the fact that the masks are healthy or a
aid.
part of the protection
Right.
that you need to have does not deny these other factors.
That's right.
Both can be true. You are, needing to do these measures because this is a highly contagious disease, more contagious than flu and other diseases, and in certain groups, it's highly dangerous.
That's right.
Much more dangerous for some groups at risk than others. So you have to be careful. But that human contact, is still
is missing.
lost. And fake contact with things like pornography, et cetera, and then not being able to have a break from each other. Where governments are trying to stuff you into your apartment and you can't go out.
And there's fear. People are living in fear all the time. What's going to happen? Can this kill me? What about my business? What about my job? What about my family? People are losing their jobs. So there's all this fear of unknown. And what's the next thing the government's going to tell us that we can't do? And so I think that escalates all the problems that kind of we touched upon, kind of wove through every show in a little bit when you talk about what's happening in the world, that fear is such a huge component.
And one of the things that we talk about, because Vanessa and I have been friends for a very long time, and we met when we were both street reporters in Detroit, and we both left the secular media and went into Catholic media and ministry. And so we tried to weave in on our shows about how the media are responsible for a lot of the fear and explain how it's a business. I mean, this is what they do in terms of, if it bleeds, it leads. There was a news director in Miami who came up with that phrase for a reason, and we would talk about how the consultants would come in and say that for me and for TV News, in that first 15 minutes of the show or the first bag, you always had to have a shocker of a story, something that's going to grab their attention. And these are consultants saying this must be done. And so it's all about marketing, and not that you don't want to get information out there, but you have to let people know that part of this is the business of media, trying to keep the sensationalism up, keep you NIMBY, not in my backyard, keep you glued to the TV to think, oh my goodness, what's going to happen next? And it's having a real effect on people, very serious effect.
Partly because they are watching
too much of it.
This
Yes.
too much.
Right.
I mean, the last election cycle had lots of tension, going on, and people were on edge and still are. We had a lot of violence last year on the streets with seeming lack of concern by some of the politicians who should have been
Right.
helping the police when we're attacking them. And what it's also struck me as odd, I don't know if it strikes you, but precisely after blaming the police for all kinds of stuff and doing this broad brush of blaming police, then they want police to go into your home like on Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and count.
How many people do you have in here?
Yeah.
Yeah, how many people?
You know,
And the governor is encouraging it. The governor of Washington telling people to, if you see someone
With
if you
extra
with extra
cars.
cars in the driveway, call the police.
Call the police.
yeah.
Or
yeah.
defund police and have social workers come when there's a domestic violence issue going on,
Right.
which we talked about on the show. It's ridiculous.
Right.
Where, the police certainly, I have contact with plenty of police. In fact, I always tell them we're in the same business, sinners.
Yeah.
I try to get the sinners before they do, but I'll take them when they're done. But be that as it may, it's very important to see that when you denigrate the police and then tell them you have to go and inspect whether there are too many people in a family at somebody's home, all you're going to do is make even more segments of the population mad at the police
Right.
for
Yeah.
interfering in their life when they don't know what to do.
And you don't want police to protect people. You want them to, investigate
Yeah.
people. I mean,
For
it's
nonsense,
ridiculous for
having a
nonsense. Yeah.
Communion party and having
Yeah.
too many people.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's unfortunate that this is happening, and that creates a lot of anxiety and fear.
Absolutely.
And the people that want police protection, you say the word defund police, and people are like, "What? I don't want to defund police. I don't want to live in anarchy," and that just creates more fear.
Yeah, no, it seems to be the desire of a number of increasingly wealthy people pushing for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a recovering news junkie.
Me too.
I
Both
used
of
to-
us are.
I mean, really,
Yeah.
you lived and breathed it. I grew
Right.
up in it. My dad was a news junkie. And I have to tell you, I've had to turn off a lot, and I can't go to the news sources anymore because my stress can't handle the stuff I'm
Yeah,
reading.
my spiritual director told me recently
Yeah.
to lay, and I'm in the business of putting a talk show together every day, so I have to watch some of it. Vanessa also has a talk show on Ave Maria Radio, so we have to be informed, but at the
Sure.
same time,
You need to take a
you need to
break.
take a break. So
do.
we cover all of these things and more on the Catholic View for Women.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, these are the kind of issues that we have to talk about, and bring a Catholic perspective, because I'm very concerned at the way the secular forces are instigating antagonism, and it's an increasingly risky situation in our country. I hear people talking amongst themselves and to me sometimes about, I wish I could buy more bullets.
Yeah.
When the police are being told not to act in law enforcement and government threatens to take away
Their guns.
individuals' firearms,
Right.
and people are saying, well, I got to protect myself and my family. And that kind of talk hypes
Hypens the
up
fear.
the
Right, the
tension.
tension.
The tension,
Right.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And one of our tasks is let's have not just calm down talk, but let's focus on Jesus Christ our Lord as the source of our peace, as the Prince of Peace, so that I can find a peace inside myself. If someone does have to protect their family, you don't do that from rage, because you're not going to hit your target.
Right.
You have to, you'll be shooting crazy.
Right.
You have to have yourself calm down, and that won't come just by saying, I got to calm myself down. You have to have a source of peace. And this is where our trust in Jesus our Lord has to be there to help us think carefully about what we're saying, what we're doing. It's a very
Well, I think also too, Father, in the period of time, and that people were isolated because of the COVID, there were some good things that happened. More families took more time to pray together, because now they're all stuck at home, and so there was more prayer life. I know the EWTN, your religious catalog.
Yeah, Michelle
was
Johnson shared that with us.
was
It was
yeah.
off the charts in sales.
off the charts
during
in
COVID.
sales.
awesome.
People buying rosaries, devotionals, going deeper into scripture, ordering Bibles. So there was an uptick in that. I know at Priests for Life, we have an online store, prolifeproducts.org, and we saw a big uptick too. People getting pro-life books to read and things. So, you know, there's always to talk about the fear and the negative stuff, but there were some positive things that
here's-
people turned to prayer more, I think.
Here's something that I think we can also reflect on. The folks who have an openness to each other and to God are going to have the uptick in more prayer
Right.
and trying to enter more deeply into the love of Christ. But the other upticks in violence, pornography, and these other foolishnesses, these are going up among those who don't see that there's important connection with God. I have to respect the dignity of these other folks. If they're into themselves,
Right.
if they're self-oriented and self-centered and selfish, then it's inevitable that they will uptick the pornography
Right.
and other evils, and with no regard to how it affects anybody else. There's that element of our culture that is a pandemic of narcissism. Psychologists started talking
Yes,
about
yes.
a pandemic of narcissism
yeah.
That's right.
Yep.
15, 20 years
Yep.
ago.
Because you got a ribbon for showing up to something. I mean, everything was patting the kid on the back, and I don't want to hurt his feelings, and I don't want him to be upset. And we have generations of kids who don't want to work, who can't be given criticism, constructive but polite, respectful criticism, because they can't handle it.
No.
And it all becomes about me. Well, we saw the whole me move. You know, it's all about me in this world.
Right.
And not the other person.
Right.
Well, we've also, too, had a couple of generations of no matter what you participate in, there's no sense of achievement anymore.
No, it's a ribbon for
E-
showing
e-
up.
Everyone
it's a
gets,
ribbon.
everyone gets
Yeah.
a trophy.
Yeah, everybody
Everyone
gets a
gets a
ribbon.
soccer trophy. Everyone
and
gets
to
a baseball
Father's
trophy.
point,
You know,
Fear is natural. Okay, things are gonna scare us sometimes, right? But when you have faith, the fear is diffused by your faith. When you don't have faith, the fear becomes anger and rage, and you want to get back and you want to fight back because you're so scared of what's happening in the world.
I think everything that we've experienced, and we've talked about this on radio show, and Janet, we've discussed this as well. Everything we're seeing now, you can really see, I think, what it's like a life with God and what it's like a life without God. And you pray for a lot of the people, you see them out there, and they're trying to reach this utopia here on earth. It doesn't exist. They don't realize, not that we have to live in horrible conditions. We always want to make things better for people and help the poor and do all the things we're called to do as Catholics. But this isn't the end. We know that. You know, we are pilgrims on a journey and trying to help people make the most of their lives, focus on God, witness to the gospel, and understand what's important in life. And you see people out there, like, for example, the Summer of Love in Seattle. Turned out to be the summer of rage and sexual assault and
Murder.
break-ins and murder.
Murder, and ironically, murder of black people
Right.
by the people that were
Yes.
there for the Summer of Love.
Yeah, and so trying to explain this to people in terms of, even on the issues that we covered, do not get your source of information, especially about spiritual matters in the Catholic faith, from the secular media. The majority of them have no idea, first of all, even if they were remotely faithful, how the church works. They don't understand the hierarchy. They don't understand the order, the teachings. And then they can't stand us because we represent, they think we're backward and oppressed and everything else. And yet people are following that and tuning into the secular media, listening to all of this noise, and then their lives become very, turned upside down. So we try to bring a sense of calm and remind them of their roots, their Catholic roots, and all these great resources that are available in the church.
Exactly. No, this is something that I think the turning away from the being news junkies was helped by the deception that most of the media presented about the politics during the election.
Yes.
Right.
It was very deceptive.
Oh, yeah, because they have an
And they were
agenda.
lying
I
through
think you're
their
being
teeth.
very nice. Yeah,
Yeah,
they're
I
lying
think
through their
you're
teeth. They're
Yeah.
absolutely lying
Right.
through their teeth. When you have 95% negative coverage, and I don't care how people feel about a particular politician, but when you have 95% negative coverage of one politician, and in this case it was the one, it was in the White House at the time of the election, then you know there's something wrong, because I don't care how bad a person is, there's got to be something you can, or you think he is, there's got to be something to balance it out with. 95% negative coverage.
Yeah.
And when you can push a story down people's throats and talk about something that was based on zip zero nada, such as a Russia collusion, and then you're not willing to investigate decent stories that have actual evidence, everything's flipped on its head.
Yeah.
The media are no longer operating as a fifth estate. They're operating as you know, exactly.
As
yeah.
agents.
As agents, right.
The big business factors that are the puppeteers for the politicians.
Exactly.
There are lots of multi-billionaire businesses and business people who are the puppeteers.
Yeah.
These politicians are,
Yeah.
with a few exceptions, but
Yeah.
most of them are puppets.
But even
And-
the people inside think they're not journalists anymore. These are activists, and we talk about this all the time. When we grew up in the streets, whether you liked a politician or not, it's the who, what, where, when, how, and why, and you
Yep.
just get to the truth, the facts. It's not about whether you like them or you agree with their policies. It's what really happened here. You don't see that anymore.
And what's
because
Most of the young people going to journalism school, Father, and we've talked to fellow reporters who are still in the business, who are Catholics trying to make their way out like we did. They have gone to speak to journalism schools, and these young people in journalism schools are saying they want to be activists. It's not about being a journalist. And part of this, what we call the fifth estate, we are supposed to help keep that check of balance and power. This is about them putting their agenda forward, because they're so used to Facebook, they're so used to, Snapchat, and always being out there with their personal opinion.
But see, this is one of the things, I remember that there had been an article published about China doesn't allow a lot of these social media.
Right.
Because what's going on is, as you've mentioned a number of times, we have a culture that says everybody wins and there's no real competition.
Right.
We are undercutting that edge that comes with competition. And at the same time, we have this culture in the media that says, but look at me, look at me, look at me. And the goal in life is to become a viral story on Facebook
Right.
or YouTube or one of these other things. That's your goal in life, not to knuckle down, really learn something
Make a difference.
and make a difference.
Right.
It's to be out there, and the Chinese government doesn't let their people do that stuff, which, again, I'm not commending, that's oppression, but they don't let them do it so that they do stay competitive in order to defeat the place of the United States.
Right.
That's their goal. And if they undercut our ethic and our drive, then the Chinese can get ahead of us, which will not be good. That is an evil system. An evil, the concentration camps that people in Hong Kong are now being rounded up and taken to concentration camps. Over 1 million religious Uyghurs, they're Muslims, in these camps, being neutered sexually so they don't have children. This is going on today. And that's what their evil system does. And they want us to become subservient to them. This is a nefarious issue, and people of faith also are being put into concentration camps in China. And I guarantee if they could do it to us here,
They would do it in a
They would
heartbeat.
do it in a heartbeat and a snap.
It's so
Yeah.
funny they don't let their kids use social media, but they create social media apps that are used in the United States.
Yeah.
Yes, they do.
Bingo. Exactly. And what's the issue is to learn what they can in order to
About
manipulate.
us.
Manipulate you.
Yeah.
Of course, that's what it is about.
And you had a great clip in the one you guys, episode you guys did with Mary about social media, about the kids so obsessed with fame.
Well,
That's
yeah,
what they want, is fame.
Kids want fame. They want to do
Yep.
the Facebook
Yeah,
Live, and kind of and we're talking about kids. We're talking, Father, 5th, 6th grade, 7th, little kid. To me, that's little kids. All right, it's not high school kids. These are grammar school kids, and they make these little short 1 minute, 2 minute little videos, Facebook Live, and then they post it up there, and it's all about the likes for them, and they want to be famous. We showed a study where they asked kids, what's most important to you? And the one thing that came across all their little slates that they wrote down was they want fame.
Fame.
They want fame.
And they don't have time to daydream, maybe 30 seconds a
Yeah,
day.
they asked them, how long do you daydream? And the one kid said, oh, about 30 seconds.
Like what we did as kids.
When we
Sit
were
up,
kids,
look at the
remember,
clouds.
I'm sure if you did this, Father, we lay, look up at the clouds,
Look at
say,
all the
oh,
different
looks
shapes
like
in
an
the clouds,
angel,
try to
looks
figure
like
it out.
this.
Right, yeah.
And scientists have shown that if you don't have time to daydream, you lose empathy
And creativity.
Yeah.
and creativity. Because that's
course.
that part of the brain that is stimulated during daydreaming. And so this is very serious. It all lines up together to show the deterioration of our society before us, what's happening.
We have to take a little break. We'll be back. We'll bring a new guest as well. So please stay with us as we continue this conversation. Welcome back. We have been talking with the ladies of the Catholic View for Women, Janet Marana, Teresa Tamio, and now we'd like to introduce a new member of their group. Please welcome Mary Kaminsky from the great state of New Jersey.
Jersey girl.
Yes, another one. Well, welcome. Welcome.
Thank you so
Good to
much,
have
Father.
you
It's
on
great
here,
to
Mary.
be here.
Yeah. What do you do in Jersey?
Well, I work at
You're not hanging out at the shore.
No, well, yes, I do that too. I love the Jersey Shore. I work at the Newman Catholic Center,
Yeah.
which is a Catholic center serving Montclair State University, the second largest university in the state of New Jersey.
Okay.
And I work there as part of the pastoral team. We have a chaplain, full-time chaplain, Father Jim Chern, and also 4 focused missionaries,
Okay.
Fellowship of Catholic University students,
Yes.
and we have campus ministers. And we're under the umbrella in the Archdiocese of Newark of campus ministry. We
So
serve
what town is this in?
Montclair. Montclair, it's
Is
about,
that near anything?
it's, yes it is. It's about 20 minutes outside of New York City.
Okay. So
So-
it's way up there in the north.
Yes, North Jersey, correct.
Good. Okay, good. And how did you get involved with being in this group?
Well, I've known Janet for the past 20 years through the pro-life movement, actually. I'm a member of Silent No More, and we actually used to do Rachel's Vineyard retreats together in Staten Island, New York. We started a retreat site there. And then I became involved, and I met Teresa coming down to the March for Life every year and testifying in front of the Supreme Court, as well as sharing, helping other women, mentoring them.
And actually, she's not a stranger to EWTN. Mary was on a number of years ago, A Life on the Rock, when we did a segment about Silent No More.
Okay.
And Mary, having had an abortion, holding her I Regret sign, giving her testimony in Washington. So we were on together on Life on the Rock. So,
Right.
so this is a return trip to the network for her.
Good. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Good to have you here. And we'll start off with you, actually, in terms of the topic. What have you found as the topics in this series that you're doing that most struck you?
Well, I'm looking at my experience with college students, and one of the most important topics was the gender dysphoria. We're finding, yes, especially in a state university where it doesn't matter if you are a man or a woman. Okay, what matters is you choose your own identity, and you must be respected using the correct pronouns. And of course, it's very difficult if you're in a Catholic center. How do we mentor our students and teach them theology of the body and how God created man and woman? And what are our gifts as women? That's what I've tried to spend the last 13 years I've been there, to encourage the girls that I work with. You know, should you be proud to be a woman, okay? And there's so much history within the church, especially, the late St. Pope John Paul II in his letter to women, and also the dignity that we have and the gifts that we have. So those areas in the gender dysphoria and now the transgenderism issue have been important, as well as the egg donation, like Janet mentioned before.
Right.
That's a big thing. There's ads in our student newspapers to donate your eggs for anywhere from $8,000 to $10,000
Per round.
per round.
Per round.
What do you mean, what's entailed in
You
around?
could donate more than once. So every
Right.
time you donate your eggs,
It's
your eggs are
between-
harvested. You're getting about 10 grand.
So you could have, and I'm sure Mary knows, you probably have students. You could do this once a semester.
Right.
And take in $8,000 to $10,000. And so, what Mary and we did on the show, we showed the damage, the drugs they give the women to hyperovulate in order to do the collection of these eggs are dangerous to women and cause all kinds of complications. And we even had cases of young girls who did the procedure and then had all kinds of complications. One even had to have a tube removed, her ovaries removed. So years later now, when she wants to have children, well, that's been taken away from her. They've lost their infertility. They're becoming
They lost their
infertile.
fertility.
I'm saying they lost their fertility. But they prey on the money part for the kids.
Exactly.
The other thing, I saw the same thing applied to boys, that would go to a sperm bank.
Right.
And here's the question I posed to them. They'd be 20 years old or so, college kid. And I said, no, all right, picture yourself when you're 35, 40. There's a knock at the front door while you're sitting at dinner, and some kid shows up saying, hi, I found out that you are my dad.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
And how do you start explaining that to your spouse and your children? And then the other question, and this would be, I don't know what kind of records they keep, what kind of information rights any children conceived in this way would have. But do they then know that they're not dating a sibling?
That's
Or
an
a
issue that we
half-sibling?
discussed on the
That's the issue we
program.
brought in the
Dr.
program.
Jennifer Roback-Morris from the Ruth Institute, we had a clip from her talking about the fact that she knew a young man who moved out of his hometown because he was having a very strange experience of seeing so many people in the town that
like
looked
him.
just like him.
Look like him.
And this is happening over and over and over again.
And see, this is a problem that they don't seem to deal with well
No,
in
they
the
don't address it.
process.
No.
And there's no way to know, because it's not only knowing that you're not marrying a half sibling, but also knowing what are the genetic proclivities of both parents in regard to diabetes, cancer,
Health
and
records.
a wide variety of other things. You don't have ready access to all that. And these are problems in addition to the moral questions
Right.
Right.
that are involved in this. And I don't think that the folks pushing for this stuff and making a lot of money at it.
Yes.
We cannot, if they're paying some girl $10,000,
$10,000. They have a lot of money to throw
then
around. Right.
you know she's getting chicken feed.
Right.
There's a
Compared to-
lot of money being
Father,
made by somebody else.
If you talk to anyone who's done IVF, they'll tell you it's costing them up to $20,000 per attempt, all the expenses that are involved. And the other thing that happens with the donor thing is that, let's say this young college girl is going to donate her eggs, right? They take a whole profile on her. They do a background of her medical history, what's her IQ, her like a whole profile, her picture, everything. And see, then when the couple comes in and they want to, get pick a donor, they actually shop. So this is like children made
designer
made to
baby.
order. They're
Yeah.
designer babies. So they're picking out the mom and the dad. They're looking. And there was one case where the mother, the one who wanted to do this, she said, "Okay, let's just look. Oh, look at that girl. She looks like a lot like me. I want her eggs because this way the baby will look a lot like me."
Yeah.
This is what we come down to. This is crazy.
Yeah.
You know?
I remember a comedy show in which one lady had gone, well, a bunch of ladies had gone to sperm bank, and one of the ladies was elderly and said, "You got any Tony Bennett in there?" I mean, this is, and it's a funny line in a way, but it
it's
brings
reality.
out
It's sad. It's reality.
the exaggeration of what does go on.
That's right.
And
And
what
then
they
there's the other
expect.
complication, Father, that, okay, let's say a couple does in vitro, all right? And they maybe have extra eggs, frozen embryos, right? Now, first of all, they have to pay a fee every month to keep those babies frozen, okay? And then when there's a divorce, there's a big issue there.
Custody.
Custody
battle over the
custody battle
embryos.
over the embryos, all right? And then in some cases, some people want to stop paying, okay, altogether, and they'll say, well, just discard them, and then that's when those embryos then get used over for research because they're going to stop paying. So then they get sold over to another company that does research, a pharmacy company. And then there's the other complication. Okay, so you do in vitro fertilization, and it's too successful. She's pregnant now with several babies. So what's the very first thing the doctor says?
You have to abort some.
Well, they don't use the word abort, Father, now. They use the word selective reduction. And how do we decide who we're getting rid of? Oh, well, then the doctor tells the parents, they wait till about the second trimester, and they say, well, you have, let's say there's 4 babies. Oh, let's see, we have 2 boys and 2 girls. And, oh, well, here's where they're positioned. And they're showing them on a sonogram now. They're watching, okay? And they say, well, the boys are all the way up here in the uterus, but the girls are over here. So if you only want 2 babies, we probably could reduce the girls. Or the couple will pick, okay, based on the information.
Picking which
So you're
babies they're going to kill.
or which babies are going to be allowed to be born. And there was another case, I wrote about this in my book, Recall Abortion. It was tragic. It happened up in New York. This was a couple that did the IVF, and she conceived twins. And she was so upset. I only want 1 baby. I don't want 2. And she told the doctor, okay, let's reduce this pregnancy by 1. Her husband was begging her, no, we can't do this. Look at what we went through to conceive these children. Please don't. And she said to her husband, either we abort 1, get rid of 1, or I'll abort the entire pregnancy. So this father had no rights, and he was faced with save 1 or save none.
See, this is taking Sophie's Choice.
Yes.
If you ever saw that
Oh, yeah,
movie.
powerful movie, yeah.
Powerful movie,
Yeah.
where she had to choose,
Between
does
her
she
son
let
and
the
daughter, yeah.
Nazis kill her son or her daughter?
Right.
That was her. And this kind of, the importance of a movie like that is now, instead of Nazi soldiers forcing you to choose,
It's doctors.
It's doctors and nurses forcing you to choose.
And so what we try to do in these episodes is we try to say, okay, here's what the church teaches. So we put the teachings out there on the life issues. And why does the church say that IVF is not something that we can do as Catholics? Because people always accuse us, I'm sure you've heard this a million times as a priest, well, you're supposed to be so pro-life, and if a family wants a baby so badly, how can you deny them, this opportunity to possibly conceive? And so we always try to tell people to connect the dots